Have you ever wondered what it's like to have enough shares in Tesla that it makes you lose some sleep sometimes? I have. What a nice thing that would be. So today we're going to have an interview with someone who has more than that many shares. I'm Brian. Welcome to my Tesla Weekend. This is Jose Caldino. He's an interesting guy. I met him before Texas. I met him in Texas. And now he's here to share some nuggets of wisdom. Jose, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing great. The weather is improving. I have nothing to complain about, at least no legitimate complaints, which has never stopped me before. So, real quick, why don't you tell us a bit about your background, what you did, professionally, and up until, the whole Tesla thing got started.
Yeah. It could be a long story, but I did 30 years, basically, 29 and some odd months in the semiconductor industry. Working for companies like Analog Devices, AMD I contracted with IBM. Analog Devices they're from like 1965. Very long, a lot of longevity in the semiconductor industry. They're on the analog side, so you don't hear a whole lot about them. But started my career at Harris Corporation in Florida, out of college from Florida Institute of Technology, way back in the early 90s.
So, tell us how big your Tesla position is, and how did you get into it?
So today, I've actually, I have 10,000 shares, just over 10,000. And I'm keeping 5 million in cash, just over 5 million in cash right now. So I could have more, and I did have more, and I had options before too, and I made good money on options in Tesla. But I've gotten all out of options with this crazy volatility. So that's where I'm at. Basic summary is 10,000 Tesla shares and 5 million in cash, and I'd like to redeploy that in Tesla.
So since we first talked, you've seen some highs and lows, haven't you?
Yes, yes.
Well, even before we talked, back in January, there was a day when it went down $108.31 on January 26th. That's $1 million.
Yes, it is.
How'd that leave you feeling?
I've seen over $3 million days up and down. So, but yeah, the account was smaller already when it moved down over $1 million on that day. So it's a little bit gut wrenching, but once I got to the point of putting 5 million in cash, it's less stressful, just because for lack of a better term, and pardon the thing, but my FU number, my original one was like 4 million. And, I really like double that just because, taxes and other things can eat away at it. But 5+ shares is comfortable. So I sleep well at night like that.
So when did you get into Tesla, and why Tesla so aggressively? What's different about Tesla, man?
Yeah, so I can go way back. My first experience ever with a Tesla was in like 2010 or 11. Working at Analog Devices, the head of the site here in Greensboro, North Carolina is where I'm located, and it's a site of like 300 employees. Headquarters for the company is in Wilmington, Massachusetts. But the head of the site here, or one of the main guys, he actually had a Tesla Roadster, the original one. And one day, there was like 6 or 7 of us engineers out there in the parking lot. He was showing it to everybody and talking about it. So I'd seen it then, but it didn't turn me on to it. And can this be a little bit of a story? Can I go for 5 or 10 minutes?
Sure.
Okay, so that was my first exposure to it. And I think, it was about that time. See, I had been investing since 1994. I had never really hit it big, we'll say. I invested in Cisco, but just discipline, not sticking with things, selling out at the wrong time, stuff like that. And I'd gotten back in. I kept investing in different things. I'd watched a lot of the big players in the late '90s, before the 2000 bust, and then it was a long rebuild from then. So I've been back in the market, building my 401k, building a Roth for me and my wife. Even had a health savings account, which I hadn't started investing with yet, but I did later. So around 2011, though, I had looked at my accounts and said, you know what, things aren't going well. I'm not performing well. Everybody tells you, get a 30-year mortgage, pay the minimum, invest the rest, invest the difference, because, the difference of your disposable income, because stock market does way better than the rate on your mortgage. I called time out on myself around that time that I saw the first Tesla and said, you know what, I haven't done well, and I'm going to work to pay off my house and then reassess. So I took a year and a half and did that, changed jobs, had a contracting job, was able to actually pay the house off. I had stopped contributing to my investments, 401k, Roths, had a tiny retail account, taxable, but most was in retirement accounts. So I didn't really contribute any further to those. But then in 2013, I had changed jobs in 2012, a contracting job that was with AMD in Texas. I was in Greensboro, traveling back and forth, and it paid well, so we were able to pay off the house. And then I got an employment job where I could work from home with an old boss at a very good company, and was able to secure a very good salary, and was going to have about 60 to 70, well, ended up being 60 to 70,000 in disposable income a year. But in late 13, I decided I was I didn't want to work the rest of my life, and I knew the way to do it was in the stock market. And I knew what I'd been doing wasn't working. Basically, I decided I needed a community. So I joined. I had some friends back in the mid-90s that I played basketball with, early mornings on Saturdays at a church every Saturday, and they were members of the Motley Fool. And one of those guys had paid off his house with his gains from like iOmega and AOL back then. So I knew who the Motley Fool was, but I'd never even got a sign-on account until 6 months, like halfway through 2013. So by the end of the year, I was like, I'm ready, and I joined the Motley Fool. This is my nature. I went from 0 to 100. At their top level tier, paid $12,500 for a 5-year membership. And with that, I got a community online. There were forums and boards and an overload of information. So I quickly realized, well, soon enough, realized I've got to filter this stuff. It's not, they can make recommendations, but I've got to decide what I want to do. So I started following some of what they were doing, and pretty quickly, they had David Gardner had recommended Tesla, probably in 2013, and by the end of the next year, in 2014, I bought some shares in my wife's Roth IRA account based on their recommendations and me beginning to do research. I started going to conferences with the Motley Fool. I was kind of slow. For 15 months I didn't go, and then I was scratching my head going, I paid $12,500 and it covers these conferences. Okay, I have to buy food. Well, no, they feed you for most of it. I have to get there and, pay for a hotel. But, that's worth it. I'm going all in on this, and, I want to grow for, my retirement, and so I can do what I want to do later, or at least maybe figure out what that is sometime. So over that 5 years, I began to do research on Tesla, and I found people like um, value investor, or value analyst, which is Yamin Sadabar. We know his name now. He was on, what is it? He was on Seeking Alpha first, and I paid for his service there. But he gave great analysis of Tesla. Then I found Galileo Russell with Hyperchange TV on YouTube, and these people just really helped me to begin to see deeply into Tesla. This is probably 2016, 2017, and I just slowly began buying more and more of Tesla. I pulled up some records here on my screen. Like in 2000, by mid 2017, I was at 43% of our portfolios were in Tesla. By the end of the next year, it was about the same, but I'd increased my share count from like 372 to over 500. 550 by the end of the next year. And then by the end of the next year, we were at 837 shares, and by the end of next year, it was 1,000 shares. But what I was doing also was buying leaps, long-term options, and I also discovered, I got some good options education from the Motley Fool as well. So I began to understand options, and you can build with options what's called a synthetic long position. That's buy a call and then sell a put at the same strike price and the same expiration date, and then it moves exactly like the stock. So I had some of those positions too, and the neat thing about those is that you can actually roll them. Like if you have January 2019 or January 2020, so let's say January 2019 expirations at say $260 strike price. I had a number of those. If you buy the call and sell the put and it gets near that expiration, or just the next year comes out, you can roll it, and it ends up being a near zero cost transaction to roll it forward a year. So I did that at least once. But that's how I built my positions, putting 60 to 70,000 in, and this is across an IRA. By this time I had one IRA over at Fidelity. I had another one at Schwab with my current employer, and even though it's with the employer, I was fortunate to have employers that worked with the brokers and allowed you to have a brokerage side of your 401k, and you can move the money from the mutual fund side or whatever over to the brokerage side where you can actually buy shares. So I was doing that, and then I had an employee stock purchase plan with my employer. They gave me a 15% discount, so I would take those shares and immediately sell them when they became mine. So I'd have at least a 15% profit. Sometimes it was more, and I would immediately buy Tesla or Solar City. I had a bunch of Solar
City shares.
I had like 500 Solar City shares. I picked them up when it had dropped to around $20, which it was like $10,000 for about 500 shares. So that turned into like 55 Tesla shares, because it was like a 1-to-11 ratio when Tesla bought them. So I got some Tesla shares that way too.
So what was it about Tesla that made you say, this is the company I'm going to go so heavily into?
One thing I ran across too, I just started researching, digging, and this was outside anything the Motley Fool was telling me. I found Tony Seba's work, his Rethink X, in 2017 when he published a 70-page, it's basically a research report, but he actually published it as a book on Amazon also. I had downloaded the PDF, read like the first 30 pages in a week, and that really convinced me. I mean, it was like, I'm an engineer, and that stuff just spoke to me. It's math, it's numbers, it shows you trends. I had also begun reading like executive level books, on how to grow companies. Inside the Tornado. I should have got them off my shelf, but I have them over there. I could go get them. But I've read books on how companies change, how companies need to change to follow a secular trend in technology and things like this. And Tesla was checking all the boxes. Plus Tony Seba's work on where the future is going with batteries, with artificial intelligence, with peak oil, with trends towards ride sharing and Uber coming up and that taking off. I mean, I could just see the trends, and it was like Tesla was ticking all the boxes. And then Galileo Russell and value analyst helped me to see that Tesla was actually profitable if they would just stop growing. So in other words, they were operationally profitable all along. They were bleeding cash because they were growing, and that was the only, and they were getting slammed in the marketplace for that. So, but those two guys helped me see this, and I track revenues like crazy, and I read everything I could find on Elon Musk. The Ashley Vance biography was huge for me. I just got to know who he was, and I was like, he's an honest man. And I began sitting on every quarterly conference call and listening. And then I would, go listen to, then I'd read what other people, or watch, Galley, and then there was Rob Maurer, and there's, Stephen Mark Ryan, and but these were, these guys came along later when the stock started to move, some of them. But my conviction got deeper and deeper because I knew, for me, the number one thing in finding a stock that's going to grow is revenue growth. If they can't grow their business, you don't have a chance of growing with them. So number two is total addressable market. And the deeper I dug into Tesla, it was like, I can't get my... it's vast. I mean, just vehicles is hundreds of billions of dollars of market opportunity, market size. And that's only scratching the surface. We got, artificial intelligence, we got the robotaxis, and then you've got, AGI, artificial general intelligence with robots and all this stuff. But just the car market is huge. And I listened to Elon when he said, we're setting out to make the best car. Not the best, not a good electric car. We're setting out to make the best car. He's not competing to get electric vehicle share. He's competing to get transportation market share. And that, it all made sense to me as an engineer and a thinking person.
So if you look back at other companies historically, can you think of one that this sort of opportunity reminds you of in terms of its scale, in terms of its total addressable market, in terms of its margins and enthusiasm? Anything?
Gosh. Not really. I mean, Apple comes to mind, Netflix, Amazon, but I mean, it's not the same. It's not. I mean, because they had one addressable market and they've run their course. Now, if you were early, you'd have made good money. One that does come to mind, and I told you I was invested in it, is Cisco Systems. And I have always gone to this as, I don't know of another company, Tesla hasn't even done this, but again, Cisco didn't last. But I don't know of any other company that grew 1,000 times in 10 years. And they did. But mind you, they're not at that price today still. But from 1991 from 1990 to March of 1990 to March of 2000, they grew from 8 cents to $80. And they built the internet. So that was, but it's not like
the
Tesla
switchers
because
and
it was
the routers
limited.
and all the back
What's
end
that?
stuff, right?
Yeah.
So what would you look for in terms of an outcome that would make you say, okay, now is the time to start thinking about winding down my Tesla position, or at least not expanding it anymore?
Oh gosh, yeah. I just keep thinking about how I can expand it, and I don't have.
But if they
additional
started
capital.
paying dividends, if they turn from growth into into just a regular old blue chip, would it be
Yeah, I
time to
mean
sell?
that would do it, but I don't see that happening.
For sure.
I don't want to
Not-
say even in my lifetime, but
maybe not. Maybe not.
maybe not for the foreseeable future. I just don't see that happening. But yeah, I mean, if they started paying dividends, I might, peel off and go into other things. I mean, I do have 2 rental houses, and I like to get a few more. But that's pretty small compared to what Tesla, what my total holdings are and what I see them becoming. We have 2 houses. I'd like to maybe get to 12 because that would cover all our expenses and very easily, and it'd be like, okay, the real estate's got that covered and it's no problem. But yeah, I mean, if they started paying dividends, I mean, that just has a whole bunch of meaning behind it. It means they don't know what to do with their extra cash. Well, maybe that's all it means, though. If they're still growing, when Elon said, I've heard Elon, I remember in 2000, it must have been like 2016 or 15, Elon said, this is the first time I'd ever heard him say, and it's the first time and only time I've ever heard any CEO ever state on an earnings call, I see Tesla growing at 50% compounded rate for the foreseeable future. And he has repeated that every couple of years, and now it's in every quarterly report. And I easily just went back to looked at, I keep my own records of their quarterly revenue numbers, and I make charts and stuff of them on an annual basis and everything, and they were ahead of that rate at the time he said that. I'm like, okay, quote unquote, law of large numbers or big size, these are what Wall Street people like to say, they can't continue that forever. I was like, well, we'll see. Elon believes this, and I tend to believe him.
Well, and the important thing is you can only grow cars so much. You'd have to find a second or third or fourth sector to enter, which they have.
Correct.
Energy, I forget, is energy a big sector? Remind me.
It's larger than the car market, yeah.
By-
Stephen Mark
by-
Ryan always shows this largest companies, from Wikipedia or something list, and I've seen it, but yeah, a lot of them are Saudi Aramco and
Right.
Exxon and other big companies out there. Yeah, it's huge. But back, prior to 2020. I didn't see a need to look beyond the car market. I mean, who knew we'd grow 20x in a year? Or something like that.
It was about that. It was real fast, and it was about 20x.
It was, yeah. So, that question only really came into play after that growth. Although the energy market was already on his radar, and he had already stated, like in 2017 and 18, he was talking about that he sees the energy side of the business surpassing the auto side of the business in the future. He had already stated that, and so I had already looked at that, and Tony Seba had already covered it in his stuff in 2017, and it was playing out. And he explained how, the IEA, the industry, the energy industry, EIA, Energy Industry Association, they always do linear projections, and they miss year after year. And, I mean, they never get it right, and it just boggles my mind. I guess it's these government entities, or just, I don't know why they don't They're not engineers, something. I don't know. They just don't understand exponential growth. But
Are there any other companies you see that are even half as good as what you see as Tesla being?
well, I don't know. Shopify might be half as good. I don't know. The, the the interesting Shopify was a like a metric for me versus Tesla. I tracked them together. Shopify was a big recommendation from the Motley Fool in like 2015. I bought just 100 shares then at $50. It grew to 2,000. And I was tracking Shopify's revenue growth versus Tesla's revenue growth. It was the same on a rate basis. 60-70% a year for like 4, 5, 6 years. And Tesla's stock was flat. And Shopify's was growing steadily, 100% a year or something. Just it went from 50 to 2,000 in like 4 or 5 years. Of course, now it's 700 something, or no, it's under $400 today. But so it's pulled back a whole heck of a lot more than Tesla. So half as good as Tesla? I don't know. I mean, the stock performed as well as Tesla, over 5 years. Tesla did it in 1 year, but as a company, yeah, I don't see them being able to sustain 50% as long as I see Tesla being able to sustain.
Because I look at companies
50%.
like GM who say, well, we want to get into power, we want to get all the EVs, we want to get into autonomy, but they don't. Those are aspiration, those are not plans.
But yeah,
And they don't have the commitment, and the shareholders, I don't think, have the stomach for the investment.
They don't. And Elon being the top guy at Tesla just has so much impact because he's an engineer, he does the numbers, he makes the decisions, he's got the knowledge to make the decisions around, and to know whether or not they can go forward. I should have pulled up this article and shown it to you. But I read an article in like 2018. It was the most interesting thing. It was a survey. Somebody had done a very, very good analysis, and it was who is the most risk-averse CEO out there. It came up as Elon Musk.
Okay.
Because they studied how he operates. They might have interviewed him. And I thought this was astounding. I looked into the psychological side of Elon. Somehow I came across stuff that just really gave me insights. But how they got to this conclusion was they came to understand that how Elon makes decisions is he does all the engineering. He puts a bunch of math behind every decision before he makes one. No decision he makes is on a whim. It's based on engineering calculations and results. And he makes aggressive things, but he knows it's possible physically on first principles with physics. And he puts in the dollars and cents calculations too. So they came to understand that and said he's the most risk-averse CEO because he won't take on something unless he knows it's possible.
So what I hear you saying is, looking at that survey, something like the Cybertruck, which to an outsider might look like a very risky gamble, he's looking at it from first principles and saying, it works and it'll be cheaper and I'm sure people will buy it. This is the lowest risk truck we can make.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example, Brian, because he comes at it from a market standpoint on the engineering side, on the spec side. Can we hit all the specs? He probably went to the engineers and said, we need to hit these specs. I don't care how you do it. We need to start from and they came up with this, cold rolled steel, no bends. It's all straight. We don't need paint. But it ticks all the boxes. It's got specs of all the other trucks out there. And so, yeah.
So you've got a background in silicone, in semiconductors.
Yes.
Talk to me about Dojo and explain it to me Not as if I'm a complete fool, but if I'm a complete fool who has watched everything I can find, give me some bullet points on what's amazing about Dojo. The chip itself, the actual physical product.
I was blown away. I've been trying to follow other things in this semiconductor industry. They're using what's called wafer scale integration, WSI. And what that means is, I wish I had a wafer, but
does it mean they don't cut the chip?
That it means they don't cut the wafer. Normally, you get chips by cutting the wafer into squares or rectangles. Each chip is a piece of the wafer.
Because, it's the whole. Now your connections are as many as you want and as fast as the chip itself.
They're all in silicon. But the thing about Dojo, it's like 5 of these layered to get one Dojo unit. So, the Dojo, people call it the Dojo chip, but it's really like 5 wafers together, and that's one unit. And then they'll put 500 of these together to get their base level Dojo supercomputer, and then they can just scale those too. It's just
how many innovations would you say there were? How many step changes in the Dojo that we saw last year?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I didn't sit down and
because the cooling looked revolutionary. The uncut wafer was pretty unique.
Yeah, the uncut wafer. That's been done before, but not at that level. There's another company that's specializing in WSI, but they didn't. Tesla, they do things when they have a need. They can do so much more, and it's just amazing. Somehow they built that thing with the ability to scale. I remember watching videos on that and reading some researchy papers that I didn't fully understand. But the gist of it was that they had looked at the latencies and taken all that into account with scaling. In other words, 5 wafers together, how do you get the cooling out of that? And then you've got this one Dojo unit, and you're going to, parallelize, hundreds of these together into a larger unit, and then you can build, and somehow they studied the thermodynamics in that is just amazing. To get all the heat out and to study it up to the level of just not just a rack but multiple. I don't even know if they're putting it in racks. They probably don't even use a rack. They call it something else. They broke a lot of barriers there, I guess you'd say, when they put that together. The speed, the cooling, the parallelization. Now they did some optimization with the software side too. The number of bits they use. This might be in their neural net training side of things, but the number of bits that are used to do a lot of the math, they've minimized it to just what they need, but made sure it's enough to get done what they need to get done. And so it's the same way Elon drives everyone at Tesla to work. And people come in that work this way anyway. It's being efficient, right? In the factory, he says, we need to save pennies on 1,000 different processes to get the costs down. That's what this is. It's like, hey, we only need a certain number of bits to get this done, but we got to get it done right, and it has to be accurate. So there were some methods out there, but they fine-tuned them, and they're even working with they're like standards, like IEEE standards on these calculation methods and things. So, they do what they need to do to get things done. It's just amazing. And to get them done efficiently so that they can run optimally and at scale and at speed. It's the same way they built their factories. They built the chips.
So what are you expecting from AI Day 2? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh gosh, I would like to be there. I need to talk to some people, see if I can get there somehow. I'm expecting they're going to give us an update on what they've done with Dojo so far. Maybe we'll hear like, okay, we've put together a Dojo training facility, AI training facility. You think of it as a martial arts place, right? A dojo. But it's a training facility for all their, billions of miles of data they've got coming in. Now, it's that recent video from Dave with James Dama, where he broke down he parsed some words that were said by Elon in an interview, and it's like 180,000 images were added or something, or frames, or videos, or something. But he broke it down to like it's 1 billion images, and it's like a million times. It's just staggeringly more images that are training the AI system than anybody else has. So,
and the self-driving autonomy is, of course, impossible. Just like growing a car company 50% year after year, just like reusing rockets, it's impossible. Just like powered flight, impossible.
Just because nobody's ever done it, right?
Right, it's impossible until it isn't.
Right,
and a lot of things that were impossible. James Dalma points out that speech to text was impossible, and then once it was cracked globally within 2 years.
Yep. So that's where this is going, and I'm excited to hear some of the progress here. I just got my update yesterday. There was another update in the car, and I haven't noticed, everything it's been doing. I only drove this morning, but I'm just excited when these things come because I know there are improvements, and hopefully they'll share some metrics like, okay, we built a Dojo supercomputer with 500. We said we'd do 500. We've actually got 400, or maybe they'll tell us we've got 1,000 units in there, and it's cranking this much data. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I'm hoping for an update and then where they think they're going, over the next year or two. I'm pretty amazed though that they're giving us a report just 1 year later to the day. That's something's going to have happened quickly and done very well, I think.
And I don't think it's that they need to really push recruiting again, because applicants are very well aware of this project, and the number of applications was through the roof last time.
Yeah, 100 times in one day. But my guess is they've advanced so much they're working on new problems. So they want to share what the new problems are to attract the right talent. So they want to share exactly what they need, because maybe things have changed, or things probably have changed. They've advanced, is what I'm guessing. They've advanced a lot. So they have new things to work on, so they want new people.
So they need yesterday, over the last few days, by the time this comes out, over the last week, there was leaked emails from Elon saying, get back in the office, 40 hours minimum. We work hard here, period. As an investor, how do you feel about that?
Well, I watched Dave Lee's review on that right away, and Stephen Mark Ryan's, and I mean, that's actually how I found out about it. I kind of have to admit, a lot of times I watch these things daily, and sometimes that's how I first hear about things. It's easy to get lazy in doing your own research when we've got so many good resources out there. But then I did see it, and I could see. And then I went to the gym this morning with a couple guys that I work out with, and one of them was like, "Hey, Jose, this one guy's a recruiter, so he keeps up with workplace things. So he heard about it right away, and he's like, oh, there's already people. There's a lot of new Tesla employees on LinkedIn. They've got their LinkedIn set to open for work now. And so I was like, well, I guess that's gonna happen. And I thought, well, it may, it's probably going to overshoot. That's how things work. Elon's probably aware of that. The overshoot meaning there might be a quick brain drain, especially, and my buddy at the gym, he was like, especially like IT people, they're kicking back hard. And I thought, well, that makes sense. They would kick back hard because they don't think, I don't need to be there for solving these problems and stuff. And there may be some truth to that. So, I see where Elon's coming from, though, And they are a different company than all those other ones out there that are being compared to. Microsoft, Amazon. I mean, all these Amazon you could argue is not like Microsoft, and all these other ones are pure software. Twitter, Netflix, even. I mean, I just threw that in, but I mean it's pure software pretty much, unless you're making movies. They're pretty much pure software. But Amazon has warehouses. They move things, but they don't make things. Tesla makes things, and that's all they do is make things. They have some good software and stuff too, but that's not their main product. The software supports hardware that they make. And from Elon's standpoint, he's saying, hey, I'm there, the factory workers are there, we need everybody on site. So I can't really argue with it. I mean, I know for myself, I work better with a team, and there is something to the physical aspect of it. Now, I did work 5 straight years from home, and that went fairly well, but there were tough times that I know things would have been better if I was around people. But part of that was some corporate stuff, projects, management and projects being managed. I wasn't matched up with the right project and things like that. So, yeah, I think I totally understand where Elon's coming from. And it's a battle out there. I've read other things from other companies, and there are employees pushing back hard. But I respect Elon for standing for what he believes. And I believe in the principles that he's pushing there. It's that, work just gets done better when people are together as a team. And if we're building things, we need to be there. So.
Okay. What advice, and this will be the last one because we've gone on, I've taken quite enough of your valuable time.
That's all
right. What advice do you have for investors just generally? No matter what they're looking at, no matter what they're thinking about, if they're considering an investment, what's your advice?
Well, if you're going to decide to do it yourself, which I would recommend, you need to educate yourself on a lot of things. You have to be sound. You have to have a good financial understanding of, economics in general. You need to be able to manage your own money well first. That's a basic prerequisite. But as far as looking for companies to invest in, and I say it that way on purpose, I don't like to use the language looking for stocks to invest in, because I invest in a company, not a stock. The stock is the price of the company in the market. And, Warren Buffett says, in the short term, the stock market is a voting machine. In the long term, the stock market is a weighing machine. So, number one, the long-term view is what I would recommend. Wealth is built in the long term, not in the short term. So the weighing machine, that means that the companies that actually perform well in their business grow. Their stock price does grow over time. And, minimum of 5 years, 5, 10, 15 years. We're talking long time periods. The companies that do well grow. Now, there are parameters to look for a company that's going to do well. And the Motley Fool put some of these out, and they were very good recommendations they had. I don't have all of them off the top of my head from them, but I've made my own sort of list. And number one was the man at the top. Is he invested in the company? And Elon checks that like almost no one else. Like no one else. I mean, I remember do you remember when they used to have stock offerings, and he would buy $20 million of shares himself when they were having stock offerings? Just amazing. And he was probably borrowing on margin on the shares they already had in order to do that. But somebody who's invested, and companies that, like we said, we talked about some of these before. You have to have a growing company, a total addressable market that is big enough for continued growth? And are they really making things that are needed and useful in society? That goes along with total addressable market. But if you don't have something, then that market isn't going to grow. I remember I was looking at Crocs before. I mean, that's good, but it's very limited. The shoes.
Right.
So,
and have you seen Mary Barra is always liquidating her shares? She is always selling.
yeah. And you need to, number one, I would say, learn to do your own research. It's critical to find good sources of information because the quote-unquote news outlets, even the financial news outlets, are not generally a good source. You can find decent stock analysts out there. There aren't many. If you're going to follow a stock analyst, at least check their record on tip ranks. But use your brain and, fact check what they're saying. Don't take anything for gospel that is written in an article. Go look at the SEC records. Go to the company's website. Pull down their quarterly reports, their annual reports. Look at the numbers in there. Track them over time. Read what management says. Interpret it for yourself. And like I said, find good sources of people online. And today, I would recommend YouTube. There are so many good YouTubers out there. The retail investors. Retail investors provide a lot more information than analysts even can a lot of times. And believe it or not, this was playing out maybe for the first time in the 90s with the Motley Fool. I remember with iOmega, these guys I would play basketball with in the morning were telling me that they were getting reports online on... So the Motley Fool started as a printed newsletter in like 1992 or 3. And you had to subscribe and you'd get it in the mail. But within a year or two, they went on AOL, on America Online. And so that's how their information was disseminated. And then with that, they had chat rooms where they could share information, and for specific companies. So you could go into the AOL chat room or the iOmega chat room and share information. So Motley Fool members, some of them lived near the iOmega factory, and they'd go sit there and watch, just like people do today. You've got, Joe Tegmeyer and these guys that film the factories and put it on YouTube. Well, people were going to the gate and watching the iOmega factory, watching the trucks go out, and reporting it online back in the 90s.
Wow.
So your sources of information are critical. I mean, that was great insight to a company like iOmega back then. They knew they were shipping. Like, we know they're shipping when they started, building enough Model 3s to ship to Europe. Same thing. We had people that were tracking the ships going overseas. They knew how many cars were on the boats. I mean, this is good information to have. So you don't necessarily have to go to that level with every stock you invest in, every company that you invest in. But that kind of information is out there, and it just shows you the depths of the detailed information that is available through the internet today, specifically with YouTubers and retail investors. There's stuff available for probably any company you want to invest in. People that follow it closely and have a YouTube channel for it.
Okay. Well, Jose, I wish to thank you so much for such generous offering of your time. Do you have any questions for me before we go?
Oh, I should have written some down. So you're located in California? Where?
I'm about an hour north of Portland, Oregon.
Oh, okay. You were just saying you're East California time, I guess, East Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, nice. Wow,
And,
so you traveled quite a ways down to Texas.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Almost got into, cyber rodeo. Next time, I'm sure. Next time.
Yeah, same here. I tried, went back and forth, went over to the parking lot with the buses, didn't get in there, came back, and just, like I said, stood on the
If you
road.
couldn't get in, what chance did I have?
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, I came to understand that somebody told me that it was employees and Tesla Owners Club presidents were given tickets directly, so then they could, give them to some of their members, and then anybody who got in that was a YouTuber basically had a pass from an employee. So yeah.
Okay, well, in the comments, you guys, you have to let us know, what did we miss? What did we misunderstand? And of course, as always, my friends, stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you, clever robots, in the next interview, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'd gladly do it again. Gladly do it again.
Yeah.